My dad was in Indian politics all his life. All he could think of was a future Tulalip tribe to get ahead and get something for themselves. And
just looking at him, you can tell he was a leader, just proud and very outspoken and soft-spoken to be.
Sebastian Williams is known as a leader among leaders in Indian country. Born on October 9, 1897, in Tulalip, Washington, he was among the first in the Northwest to stand up for the rights of Native Americans. Early on, everyone knew Sebastian as Sub. He had an easygoing personality and a very strong work ethic. Sub deeply cared for his family and for his tribe. This is a man who broke through prejudice and generations of injustice. Through his hard work and determination, he opened doors so that Indian kids could feel accepted in public school. In the 1930s, he helped form the tribe's newly organized government, serving on the first Tulalip Board of Directors. And after 21 years of civil service, Sub became Tulalip's first business manager. Sebastian's father was John Williams, a Kikialis from Camino Island. Sub's mother, Sarah Charles, was Snohomish and Snoqualmie. The couple had 3 children before John died in 1902: Angela, Martin, and Sebastian. Sarah went on to marry Robert Sheldon, and the family grew.
Okay, this is the family around Sub there. And Angela is the oldest. And then Sub was next, then Martin, then Louise, and then Buster. My mother was Sarah, and my dad was Robert Sheldon.
Along with his sister Angela and brother Martin, Sebastian attended the Tulalip Indian School. Robert and Sarah didn't want their children at the government boarding school. Tuberculosis was rampant.
see, at that time, Indians couldn't attend school in Marysville unless you paid taxes. So my dad's mother bought a piece of property with a house on it in Marysville and started paying taxes on it, so she started sending all her kids to a public school. Out of the big family, he was the only one who didn't graduate. He had to quit early and help support the family. All the rest of the kids got to go to school and graduated. Dad built that house up in where I'm living now. Next to me, he built that house in started building in 26. And he started building that house, built it himself little by little as he got the money.
It was here that they raised their son, George. Throughout the years, this home collected stories upon stories of a family who grew up to be Tulalip leaders. Sub, Eleanor, and George all served on the Tulalip board, as well as Carol, George's oldest daughter.
I know my dad used to go up to Snoqualmie Falls and work in logging camps and all over outside. Most of them did. They were loggers or fishermen.
With Robert Sheldon, he had a stage line between Everett and Marysville.
We operated the stage line for about 6 years. I didn't drive too much, I drove extra, but my brother's Sub, he drove pretty steady. The only transportation we had them days, unless you get out and walk.
He was road superintendent for all these reservations when he retired.
After 2 decades of civil service, he became business manager. It was under his leadership that Tulalip developed a plan to buy back thousands of acres that it had once owned, including land along the reservation's western and eastern borders. These stories are best told by the people who knew Sebastian well.
The whole family, Martin and Sub and the Sheldons, were kind of standout families. We always looked up to them. They were instrumental in getting us into the public school system. But thinking of Sub, it has to go back to the beginning of the tribal government. He and a very special man named Wilfred Steve, who's known as Bill Steve, were the natural leaders and both of them were great orators, and they just commanded respect wherever they went.
Way back in 1935, Sub, Bill, Steve, they're the one that started the Tulalip tribes in 1935. And Sub was kind of the back fellow, but Bill Steve was the talker. And he could speak to the people and they'd listen to him, you know. So then of course there was others like Art Hatch and Alec Young, and there was 7 of them that started it. And they started it with actually no money at all. In fact, they couldn't even get a stamp, you know.
Well, it had to be somebody to bring that form of government together, you know, and get the people to be thinking about what is suddenly going to happen here, and what is going to occur in his lifetime, and what's going to occur after his lifetime, you know. And he felt that there's going to be some real good things coming down the road, and they laid the footwork. Like when they bought that Bowen property back, they said that's going to be what's going to be the salvation of our people as time goes on. So here we are today. What do we have? A cool theater village and a new casino going up, and you know, going on this 2,000 acres. So their thinking was right on. You know, said we got to have a base for our people to be able to work and gain greater income.
Union Oil come in to buy our land, and my father worked on that real hard to get him in here, and we did acquire 2,200 acres for him. And my dad had the foresight to put in a lease if they didn't build within 10 years that we could get that land back at their price. Well, they didn't build, and so we had stuck them with a contract. Well, naturally, 10 years the land had more than tripled or quadrupled in value, you know.
If there wasn't a Sub, there wouldn't have been what we have today. You know, he was just, he was a backbone of, he got all the people together, he got the board together, and he pulled them all together. He knew his constitution and bylaws. I think he was probably the one that set them up. Him and Bill Steve and my dad, George Jones, they all worked together on getting the constitution and bylaws and everything started on the tribe. And if it wasn't for his foresight on what saving our land, and we would have nothing today. I mean, people should realize what the old people had to put up with, you know, because it wasn't easy, you know. They didn't have anything, but they kept the land, and so that was just very, very important. If we wouldn't have had that, we wouldn't have our casino. But they should realize that how important he was and how knowledgeable he was.
Sub, you know, a lot of people really probably didn't really know Sub. He was a very good diplomat, you know, a real gentleman, very articulate in talking, and as I say, a good diplomat because he knew the congressional groups in town. He knew a lot of the business people in town. He was a member of a lot of these groups.
He had a marvelous mind, a marvelous analytical mind. He could see a situation, see a problem, you know, that the tribe is facing. And it's either the surrounding community, you know, with Marysville, or on the reservation, school, with the county, with the state, with the feds, and he'd quietly get the facts and learn about it.
He was an honest man and forthright. He didn't give you a wishy-washy answer. It was straight from the shoulder. And he was the type of person that he knew how to speak to get and make you comfortable, to let you know where he was at, where he was coming from.
Sub was probably one of the most dynamic leader that the tribe has, you know, and he's always right down to business, you know. Just he understood the business, and one of the main things he understood, trying to bring people together, you know, like we had to bring Marysville over to Tulalip, you know, we had the issues, you know, that, well, we won't go over there and you don't come over here, but I think he kind of mended the fences for the tribe to be able to, you know, break the barriers, you know, and but he was a great leader amongst leaders.
Well, Seb was a leader, always a leader. And he never, I don't think he ever showed any kind of, you might say, animosity that over the years has come and gone. And he was always, obviously now I realize he was always working towards the goal of making the communities or white people, the tribes, compatible. And that takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of courage. But Sub was that kind of person. He never gave up.
And he took life seriously. He was very, he would never hurt your feelings. He's sort of like, he would address you and put everything on the table. He'd be over here and they'd be over here, and he'd say, well, then we have to work and come in and meet in the middle, and then go on from there. And he says, when we do that, he says, then things will go smoothly, which it did usually. So he was a diplomat, and he was a very, very kind man, very kind man. And he was perceptive on how to treat people, because I don't know, he knew the feelings of how, by looking at you, he could read your face, I swear.
From what I know, Sub as a pioneer, I think he had all of those qualities, and he was willing to pursue them. He was willing to push as hard as he could to make those things happen. And I think he's a very honest person. And for myself, I really feel honored at this point to have this opportunity, because you're not asked very often, particularly being a white person, and this is a tribal issue. It makes me really proud.
My grandfather, Sebastian Williams, was very inspirational for me. When I was growing up, I lived a great deal with my grandparents, with Sub and Eleanor, and they taught me a lot about respect and integrity and to honor my elders. He had a great love for our people. He was very involved with education, and I remember he would go into the schools in Marysville, and I was so proud of him back then, because he would talk about the importance of education. He would talk about the importance of finishing high school and going to college. He was a man of vision, and he was a man of wanting to see the best for his people and for his own grandchildren and his family.
Family was very important to my grandfather, because he wanted to protect not only the family but the tribe too as a whole. We're all one big family in his eyes.
He was very special. He was kind and gentle, and he had a great sense of humor. And our holidays were real special, Christmas holidays and our birthdays. My grandfather and grandmother, we all celebrated those days, special days. Oh gosh, we had the salmon barbecues were great. You know, that wasn't only for family, but it was for friends too. Mom and Dad had a lot of friends in Marysville, very well known in the community. And my grandfather and grandmother were both very active in cooking fish for the community. But at our barbecues at home, gosh, they would barbecue fish on a stick, salmon, sockeye. My mom would bake Indian fried bread, and she'd make the whole works.
Those bring back memories. They They were all good, big dinners, big dinners, families, friends. We were all pretty much related, a small tribe back then, and it was beautiful. Sleeping on, I remember to get those dinners, fish-wise, we had to camp in the summertime and fish in the summer and beat seine. And then eventually we'd come home and celebrate on a weekend and have a salmon feast of the neighborhood, which is, this neighborhood here was basically a big family. It was a big family neighborhood gathering. And
it was neat. Most people came, enjoyed each other, and we all had, basically everybody had something to contribute to the party. And we always had different ones come because it's interesting to meet different people and to learn about each other. And Mom was a very good cook, and he helped her. They worked together as a team. That was wonderful to see. He built the fire, and he helped her with everything. They were just like this, side by side all the time.
They intertwined together. We went to church every Sunday with both my grandmother and grandfather. We also had to go to catechism also, but that was a big part of my grandparents' life. They also were very active in the church at St. Anne's. They did a lot of salmon bakes.
Like Sebastian, his wife Eleanor was a strong, hard worker. From her days as a young girl, how she saw times change.
North end of the reservation is where we lived. It was a beautiful place. We had a creek that ran right back at the house, and you should see the fish that used to go up that fish. Come from Quilceda, you know, that was a branch of the Quilceda. The fish used to go up there to spawn. There's a great big place up there, just sandy, and they used to go up there and spawned up there. And then when they'd come back, oh, it'd be just thousands of them running down the stream, you know. And when fish used to go up there to spawn, we used to go, kids, the creek ran right back of our house. We used to go out there and play with them, grab them by the tails, you know. We had a lot of fun with them.
Eleanor lived to be 91 years old, passing on in 1990. Sub died 18 years before in 1972 at the age of 74. Together, the two worked hard to create a better life for not just the Tulalip tribes, but for Indian tribes throughout the country. It's a legacy that continues.
He recognized that the tribe is where it is today because of what he and his first directors did. They laid the groundwork, and especially he as the manager was just the right man for the right job at the right time. He was just great.
My husband has the same traits as his dad. He's open-minded, he's generous, and he's a carbon copy, I think, of Sub.
Well, I believe that the younger people should know the past history of our tribe and our past board members that started this organization. It's been just going through, just growing, and I'm even amazed at how far we've come since I was chairman in the late 40s. And I think it's through great leadership of our people electing the leaders that we have. That's what keeps us going and going and going.